During a week when the GOP got nicknamed the Seinfeld Congress because it's a legislature about nothing, a Chinese spy balloon was almost a welcome distraction. Welcome to a special Monday edition of MOMocrats Mama Chat, part of the Demcast family of podcasts. I'm Donna Schwartz Mills here this week with Karoli of crooksandliars.com. And so the spy balloon. Let's start with that.
The dumbest news cycle in history, the spy balloon. So a balloon flies over the United States. When the news broke earlier this week, it was like on Wednesday, I think. And there was just a blurb that went out from the Washington Post or the New York Times. I don't know. It hit my alerts, that said a Chinese spy balloon is floating over the United States. Literally, that was it, and that's all the report had in it. And I'm like, who declassified that, and why did they?
Well,
Right.
the stupid thing was 3 buses wide and big enough that people could see it with the naked eye.
Right. That's as my husband pointed out to me, when you have people reporting UFOs over their heads, it's like you have to give them. So then then it just got stupid. Right. For the next 2 days, it got completely stupid. It was, Trump tweeted something about shooting it down on Truth Social. And, then all the Republicans got their panties in a bunch because why aren't we shooting it down? And of course, the answer to that is because we really don't want to rain debris on American citizens and like wreck their houses. And there's at least solar panels. We don't know what else was on there, but there were at least solar panels that were 3 buses wide. Why would you want that to rain down on the people?
And
so they waited.
And they did finally shoot it down over the weekend over water. The debris trail was 7 miles long, which, yes, that is why the military said we want to wait to shoot it down until it's over water.
Right.
And at that point, too, he did shoot it down. The Republicans are still complaining. And then we learn that there were 3 such incidents that remained classified during the Trump years, and Trump did nothing.
Right. Well, and apparently Trump didn't even know about them. And somebody asked the question, why didn't you know about him? Well, should we let's just travel back in time for a minute to when we got the news that Trump never read his, his PDBs. He had to have pictures that showed him. So I could see where maybe the military would not want to put that in front of him until they actually knew exactly what it was and, what they should do with it and everything. So,
and they wouldn't want him to tell them to shoot it down over a populated area.
Right. And order them to do that. So the Biden's order was basically shoot it down when there's no clear danger to people. And so they shot it down over shallow water in South Carolina, and to me, it was like the best of all worlds because evidently they were able to jam the signal on it. And so they were actually getting intelligence rather than giving it.
Right.
Right. And so it was.
What a dumb thing for the Chinese to do.
Yes.
Especially on the eve of a diplomatic mission. They've admitted to being the owners of another one that's floating over Latin America right now.
Right. But it's just they're saying it's just a climate gathering balloon. What are you talking about? There's
maybe it was a little of both.
Maybe it was probably just intelligence.
They've got satellites. So the fact that it was flying over, our nuclear arsenal in Montana, they weren't. It wasn't for taking pictures. It seems to be that it was more for listening or picking up radiation signals or something. But the fact that we jammed it. Yeah.
Our military saw this as an opportunity to get some intelligence of their own, and they did. And the thing that is hilarious about this is that everything actually was perfect. Now, keep in mind that nothing Biden would do would satisfy the
True.
Republicans. Okay, so if it been shot down over Montana, they would have been having the vapors for 3 days
Yes.
about how
Yes.
dare they shoot it down over Montana where it can fall on people. And
Right.
because they didn't do that and they jammed the signal, they waited until it was out to sea and then they shut it down. How dare he wait 3 days
Right.
to shoot it down?
Right.
So
Right.
there was no winning with this. And I asked myself the question today, just to try to keep it honest. What what would we have done with the messaging if it had been Trump? Who, if in other words, if it had been the Trump administration and they released this thing, the Chinese balloon, and I just don't think the news media would have run with it the same way, right? I don't think they would have like. I think it would have been minimized, I guess, is my point. And I think we
Well,
would have said, let's wait and see what the whole hoo-ha is about, rather than jumping to conclusions.
well,
And
again, if you want to think back to when Trump was president and we had the fire hose of stuff happening around him all the time, there was never a break.
right,
It might have been minimized just because there was so much else, you know?
right.
And that's part of the problem here. Our news media got addicted to that adrenaline of covering Trump. And they are bored with Biden. So they have to make things dramatic. And
Yeah.
I think that's what's at the bottom of just the whole hair pulling about this ABC poll.
Oh, huh.
Now,
Of the
mind
ABC
you,
poll.
we've seen
Mhm.
plenty of polls going into the last several election cycles
Right,
where it it was not accurate. There are
right.
definite problems right now with polling methodology.
Yep.
Basically, because people have given up their landlines, they can see when I don't pick up the phone if it's a phone call that I don't recognize.
I don't either.
So, what kind of random samples are they actually getting? People
Right.
dumb enough to pick up the phone on their landline?
Well, I mean, they might pick up the phone on the ones who are going to pick up the phone are going to be the old people, who
Right.
are
You're
home,
watching
probably
Fox.
more conservative. And
Yeah.
also, I mean, I don't know what the methodology for this is, but the Fox News polls have Biden going up in his ratings, not down, right? He started at a negative, but that negative is getting smaller, right? It's going up. And there's a lot of really amazing economic news. I mean, 517,000 new jobs
Yeah.
in the last month. That number was gobsmacking,
Yeah.
right? And that was for
This is
January, the
not
month where it typically goes down.
right. And this is not a recession.
No,
It is not a recession when you have nearly full employment.
right? Yeah, it's not a recession in any way, shape, or form. And even like the market analysts are now sort of admitting that, okay, maybe we're not going to have a recession and everything. So, but of course, we need the Fed to get on board with that too, so that we don't have more interest rate increases.
Yes. Well, at least the
But
interest rate increases are slowing down. Not as big,
yes,
not
true,
as
they
big.
are, but they could stop altogether right
Be
now.
nice.
Yeah,
It would be
but
nice.
anyway, I mean, there's nothing but good news, and that's boring. Honestly, it's boring. So news has to make things that are more exciting than that for people, I guess. It's
And
frustrating.
yeah. And so we see articles that undermine Joe Biden. We
Mhm.
see articles that completely erase all the work Kamala Harris is doing.
Oh, they don't even talk about what she's doing,
No,
which is
instead they
there
talk
is.
about how they've lost faith in her and nobody wants her to be his running mate again. That is, if
I
he runs again, because they think he shouldn't run because he's, in
I
his
know.
80s. And
I mean, you could go both ways with that, but to me, he's a young 80 octogenarian. You know what I mean? He's he's not his age to
Right,
me. But
right.
so that, suggests that he could keep going, and he's got the political know-how. He knows what he's doing.
He
I
definitely
mean,
knows what he's
that's the
doing.
bottom line. And
Yeah.
he knows what he's doing when it comes to Congress, for example, and this debt ceiling showdown that we're going to have. And again, we have the media really hyping this debt ceiling showdown when the Senate, Mitch McConnell, has already said, I'm not going to let us default. That's not going to happen.
Even
Right. And
Kevin
that came from Mitch
McCarthy
McConnell.
said that.
Right. Exactly. Right. And one of the more interesting things that happened last week, actually, with regard to that, is that Kevin McCarthy had a meeting with Joe Biden one
Mhm.
on one, and he came out of it and he said it was a good meeting. It was productive, and they're going to keep meeting and talking and blah, blah, blah. But he then the next day went to the prayer breakfast, and Joe
Yes.
Biden gave a speech at the prayer breakfast. And in that speech, he said, that he's the three things why he ran for office, right? To get out of the pandemic, to get the economy back on track, and to unite the country. He said of those things, the uniting the country has been the hardest. He said, and it's not done yet. And he said, but all we really need to do is treat people with respect, like Kevin and I have agreed to do. And McCarthy just nodded. You just know that in that meeting with McCarthy, Biden's like, listen to me. You are going to raise the debt ceiling, dude. You're not going to use, and we're not going to use that as a bargaining chip. And then you can come and we'll talk. We'll talk about the budget. You show me your budget. I'll show you my budget. We'll get together. We'll do some things, but you're not going to fuck with the debt ceiling. I mean, you just know that's how that meeting went.
Yeah.
And we're going to be respectful. We're going to do this with an eye to making an example for the public. So
Yes.
he's doing all the things. The problem is that the media, this is largely a media narrative now, right? Nobody likes Kamala Harris, or that she hasn't doing anything. She just announced huge public-private partnerships with
Yeah.
Honduras today. Huge. They're gigantic. They'll make a huge difference for the women who won't need to come up here because they'll have jobs down there and money and everything. So, I mean, there's a lot of good things happening. They don't want to report those. They would rather make it turmoil, Dems
Yeah.
in disarray. It's one of their favorite things.
But,
Sorry, I didn't mean to rant, but it
but
makes me
it's been the
mad.
Republicans in disarray. If you looked at the Congress last week with their first bits of hearings and their votes to strip Ilhan Omar from the Foreign Relations Committee, and Adam Schiff is off of intelligence. Eric Swalwell is off of intelligence. You know, and
That's too
then
bad for the country,
it
actually.
is
But
too
yeah,
bad.
yeah.
But Adam Schiff is going to make a good senator from California. So
Well, speaking of that, because we've talked about this before, and this was
yeah,
before he jumped in, right? And interestingly, I was actually a little surprised by this. He threw his hat in the ring, and like 2 days later, Nancy Pelosi endorsed him.
yes,
And then that a whole lot of people behind her fell in line to
right,
endorse him,
right,
California reps. And so he is definitely the establishment choice, but I would like to see a robust primary.
yeah.
I mean,
Like to be a
I
robust primary, but if Katie Porter does well, there'd better be somebody good to take her place, or we lose that seat.
well, Harley Ruda is still pissed at her for running for the seat that he wanted to win back.
Oh,
So he's running already, and then I think we have a progressive person that will be running shortly. So or
well, fingers
announcing
crossed.
they're running. So, I mean,
Fingers
there's going to
crossed.
be, yeah, Harley Ruda is probably a better fit for that district
Hmm.
than a progressive would be, just
Probably.
because
Just because it's a
he's
purple district.
it's a very purple district. So
Yeah.
but anyway, I mean, I just thought it was interesting that I would have waited to make any endorsements, since I mean I've heard maybe maybe that was so that Ro Khanna wouldn't throw in
Probably.
and do it too.
I
You
think
know,
I think they want it to be a cleaner, not to be a free for all. And
yeah.
again, Dianne Feinstein still hasn't said she's not running, although she shouldn't. She just
I,
shouldn't.
she, I would like to, and I say this with as much respect as
Yeah,
I have for her, which is a lot.
yeah,
Retire with dignity. You have a
yeah,
legacy.
yeah,
Don't, don't stop, you know, don't throw it out.
yeah.
Retire.
Barbara Boxer, who was elected for the first time the same time as Feinstein, she retired, and
Yeah.
she's active, she's busy. We see her commentating on
Yeah.
things. She looks happy, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, Dianne Feinstein has really made this her life. I think she'd like it if she could get the assault rifle ban back in. That's
Yeah,
like I know she's reintroduced that. It would be a great tribute to her. I just don't think it's going to happen.
yeah.
I don't see how.
And people do forget that she was the one who found Harvey Milk, you
Right.
know, bleeding to death on the floor in San
Right.
Francisco. You
Yeah.
know, that is her life's work, is trying to manage our gun situation.
Right. And it's a big task, and she's done. I mean, she got that assault weapon ban through once, but I
Yeah,
just don't think it's going to happen again. I don't.
not
At
with this
least I
Supreme
don't think
Court.
it's going to happen with this Congress. Let's just
No,
put it that way.
not
So,
this Congress, not this court.
right.
So
So, so it's time for her to retire, in my opinion, and retire
pass the
with
baton.
let us give you a big party and be
Yeah,
happy for you and welcome you
yeah,
back to California with all the things that you've done.
yeah,
I'm certainly not trying to be a misogynist about it. I just think that she's it's time for somebody new to be in the Senate from
she'll
California.
be 86 in 2024.
Yeah,
It's time.
it is time. So,
And I think that's why so many people are jumping the gun with her.
oh, I'm sure that's why. I mean, I think they're basically saying, listen, we're gonna have the primary we probably should have had last time,
Yeah,
right? We're gonna have this time.
yeah.
So yeah.
So that is where it's going to be. Um, my goodness. We've gone through almost everything that I had in my little notes from last week. There was the release of the video of Trump taking the fifth 400 times.
Oh, that was super fun. Yeah, that was great. That was completely awesome. He did, he over and over again, the fifth, the fifth, the fifth. And of course, he made a little speech at the beginning about how nobody in their right mind would do anything but the fifth, and it's his right. And of course, it is his right to do that. But as he says, if you take the fifth, you must be guilty. That's what he said. I didn't say it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it. I'm just repeating what he said.
He now says he understands why innocent people have to take the fifth.
Well, of course he does. It's all about him, after all. Am I right? It's just like,
And do we really want to
whatever.
talk about George Santos now being accused of sexual harassment?
So, you know what? I'm going to say that guy, I mean, George Santos probably deserves it, but the guy that making the accusation is super sketchy, I think. I mean, he basically went in there and recorded a job interview, or his quest for a job in there, and then turned the recording over to Josh Marshall. And then when that was kind of a flop, then the next thing you see is him accusing George Santos of sexual harassment.
Kind of a James
Could
O'Keefe type of
It is a little bit of
operation.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I
How
just don't know.
about
I
George Santos's attorney in Brazil being involved with gangland murder. How's that?
Yeah, well, there's that. And then there's the fact that George Santos is also not just a liar, but he's also a menace in his vehicle. So he owes
Mhm.
thousands in parking tickets and speeding tickets, like 5 speeding tickets, including some in school zones, by the way, and everything. So he should, and they're unpaid, of course. So
Of
here
course.
we have this guy who claims that he could loan his campaign $700,000, but he doesn't pay his parking tickets or his speeding tickets or whatever. And I have some serious
He
questions
now
about that.
the amended campaign filings are that his corporation loaned the money, but that's
But he
just
says it
getting him
was his
into more hot
money.
water. You
Right.
know,
I was going to say that's not a good thing.
no,
That's
it's not. It's
it
getting
is.
him
I
into
mean,
more hot water.
the way that should have gone, if that's true, is that the corporation would pay him a gross amount, which would net him $700,000 after taxes, which he would then loan to his campaign. And he didn't do that. He just went directly into the so I mean, he has a tax issue, the IRS on one hand, and on the other hand, he has a campaign finance issue because
Yes,
corporations can't loan directly to campaigns. I mean, it's
yes,
bad
and he
enough what
doesn't
they can
have a
do. I mean,
campaign
holy shit.
treasurer anymore. You know,
Right.
because
He doesn't,
he
yeah.
lied on his
I mean,
paperwork, and the
right,
treasurer is saying, "I can't vouch for this. I can't work for him anymore." So he has nobody to do these
right.
filings for him.
And I guess he got somebody to do it, but they're not registered to be an FEC treasurer. So, okay. Okay, I'm back now. So, yeah,
Allergies.
allergies. Yeah, I mean, they're just like, "Rawr." Anyway, um, yeah. So, I mean, as serial a liar as George Santos is, and as much as I want to believe like every bad and evil thing that is reported about him, this one about the sexual harassment and this guy, I just have to say, I'm not sure about. I
But
maybe,
I totally
but I'm
believe
not.
the ones about Matt Schlapp.
Oh, I do believe the one's about Matt Schlapp, and one of the reasons I believe it is because the guy, the accuser for Matt Schlapp, went to the campaign immediately
Yeah,
and told him what happened and got reassigned. He has text messages to back it up. He has, yeah, I mean, he has like proof. He talked to friends. He did all the
yeah,
things you're supposed to do.
right.
Right, and so that's why I totally believe him, and the fact that he's going after Schlapp and anybody else he can get for defamation, I applaud. Go for it, buddy. You do it because that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to destroy him,
Mhm.
and using their power in the media to do that.
Yeah,
And so I'm all for that guy pushing back as hard as he can
yeah.
on it, and let him litigate the whole thing out. Let's get some discovery happening.
Oh,
That'd be fun,
yes.
huh? So so yeah, it's Republicans are slimy sons of bitches. They are. And Matt Schlapp is one of the worst. So
Yeah,
whatever he
yeah.
has coming,
He's got CPAC coming.
I know.
How many times a year do they do CPAC now?
Well, it used to be just once, but now they do it in Hungary and Brazil and all the places where they can uh, you know, make little fascist followers, right? Is what I mean, and I say that without humor. It's gross, but
I
yeah.
know.
So so yeah, I mean, there's like 3 or 4 times now a year that they have. I think they have one in Florida, and
Yeah.
Florida has really become, in my opinion, the sort of the center of fascism, right? Between having DeSantis and Trump down there, and the RNC is
And
centered in
Bolsonaro.
Florida, and Bolsonaro's there, yeah. And somebody else I read was hanging out in Florida. I can't remember who it was, but it's yeah, another one of their cronies. So I don't know. I mean, Florida, maybe just a little bit. I just don't plan to go there, I guess. I don't know.
No.
I have friends in Florida, and they're perfectly nice people. Oh, I just read an article about the villages and how what a mess they are.
I know.
I know it's just and talk about corrupt. I mean, holy moly, that's just the thing with the developers and the oh my goodness.
It's not a pleasant place to be a liberal.
No, no, and I know I have friends who have actually left Florida and moved north to get away from, and that was why. It was
Wow.
like, well, we like Florida, but we can't be in this toxic political environment all the time, so they
Yeah.
left.
Yeah. So, the political stuff, the political news, that's just gonna, we'll have a lot more on Friday. You and I wanted to do
Yeah.
some discussion about healthcare in the United States.
Yes, we did. And well, let's start. There's a couple of things, but let's start with what Republicans want to do, which is they want to repeal the whole Inflation Reduction Act, which would include limiting the insulin cost to seniors and giving bigger subsidies to people on the Affordable Care Act. So now I guess their motive for wanting to repeal it is more related to the climate change provisions that are in there.
Because they really
And they're
hate
not
climate change. I mean, mitigate
they
climate change.
right. And obviously this is all symbolic, right? I mean, they could possibly vote like they did to repeal Obamacare for, for many years. They could vote to do that, but here's the thing. How do they think it's going to work if they vote to repeal the insulin cap? I don't understand what benefit they think they're going to pull out of that. Because that's going to be the Democratic ads, right? They're just on a political standpoint, Democrats are going to say, those we voted to cap insulin and make your healthcare costs lower, and they just voted to take that away from you.
Well, just like they've embraced anti-vaxxing. Maybe they now think diabetes is a hoax.
Oh God. Well, I'm here to tell them it's not. I I guarantee you it's not.
No,
And
I
it's
know it's not.
expensive. It's
Yeah.
very expensive I mean, for younger people who can have like insulin pumps and, continual glucose monitors, those are great. Those are, they keep the cost down. They're more efficient and, they more efficiently level a person's insulin levels so that they're not doing the peaks and valleys. But for older people who have diabetes, it's not so easy to do that. And they have to, they might have two or three different kinds of insulin, and they might have to monitor 4 or 5 times a day, like my mother does. Right? You take short acting for some, and you take medium acting for others, and long acting is a base. And so it's really a tough balance to walk, and that limiting cost to $35 makes a huge difference. Huge.
Well, especially since the base cost of insulin has skyrocketed in recent years.
So it's insane. So my mom pays $35 for a month's worth of insulin. My son pays $300 for a month's worth of insulin, and that's a copay.
Mm,
So, and he doesn't have that kind of money, and it's just that it's expensive. And even if it's prescribed and everything else, the copay is basically $100 per vial, and he needs 3 vials a month. So
wow.
there you go. Yeah. So it's insane the amount of money that they charge for insulin. So there's that piece of it. And then I was reading this article in ProPublica, which I don't know if we've got on the MOMocrats
I
page,
read
but
it and it's just outrageous. And no wonder your blood was boiling. And I want to interject to those who don't know. Karoli has a background of working with healthcare, with insurance companies, and
yeah,
several years working at WebMD.
all,
So
all
you
of
know
that.
these issues.
Yeah, I do. And this one was just insane. So in the world of a small world, this guy uh, who has the problems that we're about to talk about is actually somebody who went to school with my daughter's partner. So
Oh,
which makes it all the more close to home, but it was already close enough to home for me. So the point of this article is that he had a particularly horrible case of ulcerative colitis that came up for him when he was in college and he was playing basketball in, college basketball and everything. And it just completely disabled him to the point where he couldn't leave his room. He had to stay in his room close to a bathroom all the time. And all the normal treatments that they give, which are extremely expensive in and of themselves, right, weren't working. So what they do is they first start with prednisone, and there's some medications that they give. That the one that my son took was $800 a month, and that was a copay. So anyway, it was uh, the prednisone in itself is terrible. It wreaks havoc on your body. It makes your face swell. It makes you gain weight. There's nothing you can do about
it's a
any of that. But
steroid.
it is
It's
right.
an
It's still the
effective
first line of
steroid, but
treatment,
it has side effects.
right? And that's always the first line of treatment. But
Mhm.
but all the doctors know that that's just basically to get the acute case under control, and then you try to push the UC into remission with some kind of other treatment. So, for example, now Humira is a treatment
Right.
used for ulcerative colitis and Crohn's, and it's expensive, but it's not outrageously expensive. It's
It's about a
they
thousand a
help,
month for the Humira, and
right,
that's a
somewhere in there,
biologic. And
right,
that's one of the reasons why it is so expensive. You need living bodies to
right.
synthesize the substance
Hmm.
that your own body does not create enough of anymore.
Right. So this guy didn't respond to any of these first line treatments, and in fact it was so bad it went on for at least a year, maybe longer, I can't remember. He finally went to one of the top gastroenterologists in the country,
In the
who
world, in
in
the
the world,
world, they
yeah,
said at Henry Mayo
right.
or
And
Mayo
he
Clinic, Mayo Clinic.
Mayo Clinic, right, and they prescribed this doctor prescribed for him a cocktail of biologics, both of which names you've heard before, and but it was at a higher dosage than was prescribed. I mean, it was definitely a much higher dosage than the normal prescription would be, and it worked. It worked for him. He went into remission. He started gaining weight. He was able to go back to school. He was able to do, and when I say it worked, it means basically that they can leave the house for 5 or hours, or and
It
whatever, and come.
the article said that he had bouts of bloody diarrhea 20 times a day.
Yeah,
And then after he took the cocktail, the blood was gone and he was going to the bathroom a more reasonable 4 times a day.
right, right. Which is,
You
it
can live
is
with
more
that.
reasonable. You can
You can
live
live
with
with
that.
that.
You can,
Yeah.
right, and the other part of this is that if ulcerative colitis is uncontrolled, it can lead to colorectal cancer. I mean, they
Yeah.
have to, like, Adam has to have colonoscopy every 2 years to
Yeah.
check for that
Yeah.
and everything. So this was working, and United Health decides in the first year that he's getting these, they're paying for it, and then all of a sudden they don't pay for it, and they say it's being reviewed, and at the end of the year they decide to deny it, and the amount is like $700,000 for these. And 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 from there it just descends into this nightmare,
Yeah.
right, where the parents, thank God for his mother, who had the time and the effort, made the time and the effort to
Mhm.
actually fight for him. And
Yeah.
it's nothing more than what we would have done. I would have done the same thing, but she had more resources, like, to know how to fight.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. So
And that's the
she,
problem. Most of us don't have those resources. And the
right,
article said that fewer than 1% of these kind of cases get taken to court.
right. And obviously in this case that they had to take it to court. I mean,
Yeah.
nobody has the money to do that. And they have recordings that they got
Yeah. In
in
discovery.
discovery because she sued, where they're literally laughing about denying him and saying, you're going to get denied again anyway if you appeal it, and all these things,
And
and
complaining about her fighting for her son.
right, and you hear this stuff, and I was little, like I burst into tears because I'm just thinking to
Yeah.
myself, this could be
Yeah.
me. It could easily be me
Absolutely.
making this same fight. And I haven't had to because Kaiser is really good about treating this stuff, but I I can't say enough about how this mother fought, but what you learn in this article is just how determined they are to deny treatment so they can maximize profits.
Mhm.
And that's what United Healthcare did. I mean, the mother points out that, basically the cost of the treatment for him was an hour's worth of bonus for their CEO,
Right.
basically.
Right.
And
Right.
that's infuriating. That should not be. That should not
No.
be. There should be some limitation on what these guys can take out of our healthcare system, because
And
that's
that's
what they're doing.
and
They're
that's
taking it out of the
why
healthcare.
that is why we've always said that the Affordable Care Act was a first step.
Right.
We rely on these private insurance companies, and the insurance companies, as we've seen with the Medicare
Hmm.
plans, they do whatever they can to game the system and squeeze more profit out and find reasons not to pay. So they
Right.
can't reject you anymore for having pre-existing conditions, and that was huge.
Right.
But they can and often do these things where they will refuse to cover the medication that your physician has prescribed for you,
Right.
or to force you to try lesser treatments first, what
Right.
they call the step process. And I
Right.
was
Which is
reading
what we were describing a little bit with the
right,
prednisone yeah.
right. And so I was reading a related article in today's Washington Post
Hmm.
about the Step Act, which Congress in the House, they're trying to do to try and have some rules for this so that, if there is a treatment that you have tried and it doesn't work, the insurance company can't force you to do that treatment instead of trying the more expensive one that may work or
Right.
does work.
Right. And
And so
and
it was
that's
totally
honestly,
related to the ProPublica article. So
it's totally related. But the thing is that again, here we are forcing insurance companies to do something they should do. It's
yeah,
what they're there to do,
yeah,
right? They're not there to deny somebody treatment. And what makes this worse is they finally say, okay, this cocktail, it does work, but not at these dosages. We're gonna cut him down to what the FDA says is the right dosage. Well, you know what? A lot of these medications get used at higher dosages. Like the one that my
yeah,
son was on to get him off prednisone back in the day was expensive, but it was and he had to take 4 pills, and they wouldn't insure 4 pills. They would only insure two. So
right.
this is what you deal with all the
Yeah.
time with this. These
Because the
doctors
truth
know.
is that medicine is not an exact science. Each individual has different chemistry and different needs and different reactions to different dosages. And the FDA works in averages,
Right. So they're going to recommend this is the recommended dose
right?
and this is what we're going to approve, but that doesn't mean that it's the only thing that
Right.
should be done. And
Your
this
individual
is
makeup may require something much larger than what the
right.
FDA has approved.
And this is what this gastro knew
Right.
about this guy, was that he needed to have a dose that was this high, not this high. And so United Health tried to weasel out of that, basically.
Yeah.
And they didn't. Ultimately, the good news is the story has a happy ending, and they covered it. And by the
Now,
way, this was the coverage under the Penn State Student Insurance Program.
yes.
So there, I mean, there you have a population where maybe one student is going to be in this situation. Maybe not,
And the
right? They
rest is
probably went
pure profit.
exactly. They went for 20 years without anything
Mhm.
like this, and then now they have it, and they want their profit. They want their profit more than they want him to be healthy, and it's
Right.
just not
Ghoulish.
right. It is
No.
ghoulish.
And we're not just going to single out United Health because, this particular case was United Health. But from what we've read in recent reporting on just about every health insurance company out there, especially in
Mhm.
regard to Medicare, this is standard practice by all of them.
Yep, it is. It is. And again, I just keep coming back to the profit issue and the fact
Yeah.
that they made, like their CEO made hundreds of
140
millions.
million.
Yeah, it's
And they take
insane.
their profits and they do stock buybacks. And,
Right.
there really should be some kind of, I'm not against a reasonable profit. I think somebody who is successfully running a company should be well compensated, but perhaps the sky shouldn't be the limit.
Right. And especially, I guess I'm saying in healthcare, because what you're doing when you take those kinds of salaries or you make those kind of tips is you're taking the healthcare away from somebody. You're like this kid,
Yeah,
right? Or like my son should not have to pay $300 in copays plus the $250 copay for the Humira every month. He
right.
just shouldn't. I mean,
The
that's too
insurance
much.
company shouldn't be what the Republicans used to call a death panel.
Yeah,
The insurance
they
company,
should.
you pay for the insurance to protect you. And if, God forbid, you have a medical issue that, is going to be expensive, it is the responsibility of the insurance company to take care of you within
Right,
the confines of what you agreed to. You pay a premium, and that premium is supposed to guarantee that your copays are not going to bankrupt you and that you will get to live.
right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that, you're like this kid, I guarantee you, did not ask to have ulcerative colitis, and
Nobody would ask for that.
and he
That's
didn't do it to
horrible.
himself. That
Right.
this is a condition that happens to manifest around the age of 19 or 20. And it's a terrible, awful condition, autoimmune,
Yeah.
and it's just miserable.
I would like to add that even if you are ill from something that a lifestyle thing could have contributed to it, you're still
Right.
entitled to coverage.
You're still entitled to health care. I mean, that,
Yes.
right? I mean, that's the
Yes.
thing. Like,
Yes.
uh,
So I
you
don't
know,
want to
y-
blame the patient in
right,
in any of the
right.
instances
No, and
because
nobody,
because the lifestyle things are complex.
they are complex,
And it's
and
not
they're,
totally about willpower with a lot of them. We know that addiction is a disease. We're starting to recognize that obesity is a metabolic disease. And, just telling a patient that you're sick because you eat and drink too much and you need to get more exercise. And when you've done all of that, that's going to fix everything. Well, that doesn't fix everything.
Doesn't fix anything, honestly, especially for women who are postmenopausal. It doesn't. I mean,
Yeah.
and
Don't
that, I
get me
mean, that brings
started.
me to the other rant. Are we going to rant about that too? I think we should, right? Which is that it's so annoying. So there is actually something that helps women, and it was a treatment that was used a lot, and now it's not, and that's because there's one study that has some
Oh, yeah.
hinky parts to it, that suggested that possibly hormone replacement therapy would cause breast cancer. I mean, I remember working at WebMD. This came up all the time. We heard about,
And heart
where
disease.
people were really suffering. And
Mhm.
hold on a second there. Okay, sorry. People were really suffering from menopause, which is miserable in and of itself, and doctors don't really pay as much attention, I don't think, as they should to it. And hormone replacement therapy was
Yeah.
very effective, and um, it stopped because of this
Flawed
one
study.
study. So I'm here to tell you that if I had hormone replacement therapy, I wouldn't have gained weight, and I would have probably had maybe not had a stroke. Well, I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe. I mean, that might have happened anyway, but
But
there's
maybe not
definite
as
evidence.
at such an early age, because
Right.
you had a stroke at a very early age to have a stroke.
Yeah, no, I did. And, also have cardio issues and I exercised then,
Yes,
I
you did.
exercise now.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
I do all the things. I eat my vegetables. I do, I try to eat healthy, and it doesn't matter. And it's
No.
because it's not something that you can fix with anything other than hormone therapy, or now there are some drugs that are out on the market that do help women lose weight, but they're hard to get.
Right. And I want to also say that, now that the evidence is showing that hormone therapy was a good idea, maybe stopping it was a bad idea. You and I are too old to get it because after the age of
Right.
60, it is dangerous.
Hmm. Yep. 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 I know.
So there you go
Yeah.
with your
So, I mean,
personal rant.
right. But I mean, what frustrates me is that in general, I feel like women's health is always the second thing.
Oh, it is
Like,
because the studies are done by men.
on men.
Male is
Hmm.
considered the default. Most
Right.
doctors, I'd say 90% of all doctors don't even understand menopause, which affects more than 50% of the population. And they don't know
Right.
how it works. They don't know anything about it. Even the women
Right.
doctors, you know.
Right. I mean, I think there's starting to be some studies now, but that's been a long time coming. And like
Yeah,
I said, I worked at WebMD 15 years ago, right? And back then it was just standard, you're you don't get hormone therapy because maybe it causes cancer and maybe it causes heart disease.
right.
And honestly, the fact is that without it, you're more at risk for cancer and heart disease before
Yeah.
age 60.
So
So,
bummer for you and me.
yeah, I know.
Those of you
Sucks for
listening,
us.
watching who are younger than 60, in your 40s, insist on your doctor looking at that as an option for you when you need it.
Yep, absolutely. Do the thing. And should we also, since we're in the healthcare realm and women's healthcare specifically, note that it's possible that tomorrow a judge will make medication abortions illegal in all
It's
50
not only
states?
I think it's probable. I don't think it's just possible. I think it's going to happen. Once
This
again,
judge is a wingnut.
once again they've been judge shopping. This is one of
Hmm.
the Trump judges who
Hmm.
has just been horrible on everything that's been before him in Texas
Yep.
and somehow, well, I guess everybody on that circuit, I guess your odds of getting a bad judge on that circuit are just really, really good. So
They
that's
are
why they
that
file there.
yeah. The black hole circuit of the
Yeah,
country is there. Yeah, it's like
yeah,
if you want to do something to women, that's where you're going to go to do it.
right.
I mean, there's other things too, but mostly right now what we have is litigation that affects women. So
So if we thought that striking down Roe v. Wade was the worst that could happen, no, they're still working on it. They're still
they
trying to make
are
things
the
worse.
birth control, you know, medication
Mhm.
induced abortions. I mean, everything. I do envision underground railroads. I truly do.
Yeah. Well, it's already happening,
Yeah,
with operations in Mexico putting together pill packages to get to people in states where it's illegal. It's already, this is already happening.
the one thing I don't understand is how this judge could invalidate it for 50 states. Like, if this is something that is supposed to be a decision that's up to the states, like in California, we have a lot of laws that say,
Yeah.
you know, we're safe harbor for people that want abortions. You know, we have
But
a
they
lot of
believe
like
in
protections
states'
in place.
rights when it's their state. But they don't think that the blue states should have any rights. And, the FDA has approved this medication. They're overriding the
Right,
federal government if they do that too.
right. Which they'd say, well, states' rights, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But again, if that's the case, then why does Mr. Texas get to tell California what to do?
Well, you know that the Attorney General of California will file an appeal
Yes, I
immediately,
do. Yep,
and New York.
I do.
And
Yep.
this is something that's going to be fought for a long time till it gets
Yeah,
to the
I know.
Supreme Court.
Because don't you, isn't it
And
great
we
that
just
women's
need to
bodies are battlegrounds?
I know. We need to expand the court. We need to
Yeah,
expand the court and dilute the power of Clarence Thomas and Joseph Alito.
yeah, right. Speaking of which, now that we're sort of done with healthcare, speaking of Clarence Thomas, you saw the ruling that came down last week from the Fifth Circuit, same circuit, that says basically because wife beating was legal in 1791,
I
wife
missed
beaters can
this.
have guns.
I missed
Oh,
this.
you missed that?
Oh my God, I missed
Oh,
that. Oh my God.
yeah. I mean, and that's because Clarence Thomas wrote this stupid opinion in Bruin that said that basically if you have to go back and look at, you know, 1791 and what was legal then because the originalist and I mean, I don't even understand the logic behind this, but so essentially this ruling comes out from the Fifth Circuit that says you can't take the weapons away from domestic abusers because domestic abuse wasn't illegal in 1791. And it's fucked up. I'm
It's the
sorry.
same
It just
kind of thinking as Alito with his witch burning judge's opinion on abortion,
Mhm.
right?
It is exactly the same, and it's based on Clarence Thomas's opinion, and both of them need to go back to 1791, where they came from, and stay there, and stop. Because again, this is not a war on women from these guys. Like,
Yeah.
can imagine that you finally get a restraining order against that husband of yours that's been beating the crap out of you, and you can't take they can't take his guns away, and you know
Unbelievable.
you're dead. You just know you're dead.
Yeah. Oh.
Oh, I'm sorry you missed that. That was a big one on Friday and everything. So yeah, that was
Yeah.
the thing that happened.
Yeah.
Everything just gets away from us after a while. But so the State of the Union is Tuesday,
Yes.
and Biden's going to give, I would guess, a short and sweet State of the Union address, probably 20 minutes long. We've sort of seen the preview of it at the prayer breakfast and everything. He's going to talk about the economy being strong, the jobs being strong,
He's going to talk
the
about all the success that he has had that
right.
apparently the country
No,
doesn't feel yet, you know?
right. And then are the Republicans putting on to respond? Who
Sarah
could it be? Who could
Huckabee
it be?
Sanders.
The sad sack herself, right? I mean, she's like, so we're going to hear, I'm sure, about critical race theory and transgender and, how we're all perverts and I
Well,
don't know
it
what
could be
else. But
worse. It could be Marjorie Taylor Greene.
actually, the thing that I love about the fact that they're putting Sarah Huckabee Sanders on is it's truly, truly, truly the political kiss of death if you're a Republican to give that response.
It is.
Think of think of one
Marco
person who's
Rubio
given a response. Marco Rubio,
or Bobby Jindal,
right? Bobby who?
Exactly. Kevin
Yeah,
LePage.
right. I don't know. Where are those people now? Do we care? I mean, that's the thing. So it's like, go ahead. Mwah. Give your rebuttal. Mwah.
Well, I'll be watching that tomorrow. I know you will too.
Yeah, I
And
will
on
be.
that note, I say it's time to call it a show.
Okay.
So that's it for now. Join us on Friday, our usual day, on YouTube, momocrats.buzzsprout.com, or on your favorite podcast service such as iTunes, Google, and Amazon Music. And be sure to check our Facebook page for updates. This is Donna Schwartz Mills and Karoli saying goodbye for the MOMocrats. Bye!
Bye-bye.
MOMocrats Mama Chat is part of the Demcast family of podcasts.